Hey everyone, how is it going? Hope you all have been having a great time at Global Hack Week. This is going to be a pretty chill 2-hour stream where I'm basically going to answer all of your questions about game design, about Overwatch, about basically how you create a game, a multiplayer game that's meant for so many people to play. So hopefully we'll have a lot of fun, and I want to answer all of your burning questions about what it's like to kind of balance an esports game, or what it's like to kind of make a game made for so many different audiences of people. The reason I kind of chose Overwatch for this stream about game design is pretty much because it has a lot of diversity in terms of the play styles and game mechanics. So I thought it would be a really good showcase of kind of how you can put all of those elements into one game. First, let me give you all the chicken link if you haven't checked in already. Boom, there it is. I put it in chat. And I think first off, what I'm going to do is just give a little bit of background about who I am, about my experience in game design, just give a basic overview of game design in general. So, hi, my name is Zane, if you don't know me already. I'm an MLH coach. I'm the director of VTXX, which is Virginia Tech's flagship hackathon. I've supported 50 plus hackathons in a variety of roles, and I love gaming and cooking in my free time. And as for what game design is a lot of different things, and the reason I think it's important to kind of have a stream about this is just because I think a lot of people kind of just underestimate the power of video games. It's gotten me to where I am in terms of making friends, in terms of improving me being able to interact with people socially, in terms of bonding with people. It's been a huge part of my life, just like food has. I do a lot of cooking and I bond with a lot of people over that as well. So I think it's more important than a lot of people give credit for, because I see a lot of people talking about like UI and UX design, which is great, but I don't see as many people talking about those elements in game design, because that's quite literally what game design is. It's half like UI UX about the player experience, which I think is really interesting. I think there's a lot of lessons you can take from that into the software development and software engineering world. First, let me put up the new banner real quick. Game design needs a lot of dedication for sure. To this day, I'm only able to learn Blender and Physics 2 because I'm fickle-minded. I'd say it really depends on what you're actually using, because a lot of engines have quite a few things in terms of like basic physics built in. So it really depends on what kind of things you're trying to build. I'm introducing basic keyframe animations in Blender. Yeah, and I think that's pretty good too. There's a lot of games that are drastically different in design, but they're all very successful. So for example, oops. So this is a game I find really fascinating. It's called Octopath Traveler. And basically it's a game that has a kind of 3D-ish environment. It's kind of 2.5D, I would say, but it uses pixel art. And I think a lot of people, like just by saying it, I think a lot of people would kind of underestimate like the quality of this, and think it might not stand up to something like, I don't know, Snyder. And I think it might not stand up to something like Cyberpunk, which is incredibly realistic. And although it had a shaky launch, I think developers have done a decent job of kind of keeping it up. So I just think that the idea that we can have these two games both be successful and good in their own ways at the same time, period, is amazing to me. And I think it really shows that there's more to a game than graphics, and that the player experience is in a number of different ways, outside of just, you know, the visual appeal. But let me open up some Overwatch real quick. And basically I'm going to be playing some Overwatch in the background while y'all are just asking me questions about game design. And I'm going to be going over some of the design decisions that were considered in the making of Overwatch. Let me just off the music. Your descent game C and color matching in Python. Would you recommend Unity for a beginner wannabe game dev? Yeah, honestly, I like your profile picture, by the way. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. That's actually how I got started programming in the first place, was through game design, because I didn't grow up with a great background in games. Were one of the ways that helped me keep my sanity. So I started working in Unity, and actually I was in this kind of organization called the Technology Student Association. Yep, I'm a fan of Hunter x Hunter. I was in this organization called the Technology Student Association, which was a thing in my high school, and they basically had you enter in competitions like in the regional and the state and the national level for like different parts of engineering. And one of them was game design, and that's how I kind of got into software and Python development and machine learning, which I do now. Anyone here played Data Wing on Android? I have played Data Wing. It is very good. Yeah, I really like Data Wing. Let me just set this up real quick. Can you send the chicken link? Sure, I can check it. I can send that again. Oops. So how FPS movements are captured, but never knew how the environment motion and dynamics are captured. Can you clarify what you mean by the environment being captured? Let me try and share this. For some reason, it's being a bit weird. Let's see. Any good Android game recommendations? Let's see. What do I play? I mean, Pokemon Go is a very popular one. I think it's very unique for what it was. It's a very interesting AR game. I'm not into it anymore, but I know that quite a few people who were into it for quite a long time. There's also Bleach Brave Souls, which I do like, mostly because I like the series, honestly. What is this stream going to be about? I'm basically going to be going over some of the design decisions made that used in the making of Overwatch, because it's a very diverse game with a lot of different stuff going on in it. And also just answering all of your Q&A about game design, Overwatch, how to balance a competitive FPS, stuff like that. Like in single player games, objects that are kept, or in best case, let's say Far Cry games. Let's see. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, now it's not showing up. That's good. Good question. Why is C# popular for game creation? I would say it's C#, but it's also C++ and C. And I think the main reason for that is just efficiency. Because with a game, especially in terms of like Overwatch's scale, for example, like you have a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of memory management that you need to do. There's a lot of, great looking models that are all very detailed and take tons and tons of resources. So when you're creating something that can be a whole project, being a game, which can be like millions of lines of codes long, you really need it to be efficient and to be able to manage that as best you can. And also, it's good for security features as opposed to something that's maybe browser based, or using maybe a higher level language. Though of course it depends. Like you can make games in Python using something like PyGame as well. C# lighter than other languages? Yeah, I would say it is. I would say that, well, it depends on the actual project that you're making, I would say. I would say that there's just less abstraction there. The more abstraction is, the more that has to go through it. Whereas there's a lot of stuff already created within C++, the game development field. Is it a game developer a good field for the future? It really depends on what you want to do personally. There's a lot of ways you can go within game development. You can be like a pure game developer, like in Overwatch. You can be like a game programmer. You could be a map builder. There's a lot of different parts of the game, and I think I'll go through. Nice map. Let's see. What do I want to do? Let's do some King's Row. Just turn. Nope, not bleaching. Let's go to King's Row. But like I was saying, it really depends on what you as a developer want to be doing, whether that's hardcore game development itself, or if you want to be building a game for maybe a company that doesn't normally do a ton of games. It really depends. Actually, I worked at General Mills for a while as a software developer intern, and one of the things uh, that they had worked on in the past was a game called Chex Quest. And actually, in the fourth floor of the building, I was working at the headquarters at the time. There was like this huge arcade cabinet with Chex Quest on it. It's like a game from the '90s. It's like a Doom clone. It was in like packages of cereal back then. It was really cool. And honestly, that's something before my time ended there. If not, I probably would have pursued it more. I was considering actually becoming a game developer for General Mills, working on some of these like serial type games, and kind of considering like how you might do something like that in a more modern context. I like to build games as a hobby. Yeah, it's a great way to kind of get those programming fundamentals in. I always recommend to people that they try to learn things in a well, personally, how I learn is I learn things in more of a project kind of setting, where I'm being given a kind of where I'm not kind of doing problems for the sake of practice and doing problems. I'm basically learning how to solve problems through the creation of a project that I'm passionate about. And I think that really helps me in particular just because my motivation is very fickle. And I think I really hate doing tedious things just for the sake of doing them. So I think that this has really helped me to advance my career, both in game design, but also stuff like machine learning. Like part of the reason I got into machine learning was from game design, because I knew about it like tangentially, but I didn't know too much about it personally. But what I ended up doing was I learned about ray tracing, and ray tracing is such an interesting concept to me. Basically, using machine learning to improve the graphics of a video game, using machine learning, which can analyze so much more data than just an individual person can through creating individual pieces of art. So I think I'll play a match or two here, just so y'all get the gist of Overwatch if you haven't played it already. Basically, it's a first-person team-based shooter. So there are 2 teams of 5 here. And we're basically fighting to, in this case, we're escorting the payload. So basically, we push a little cart, and we push it to the goal, which the enemy team is on defense. They're trying to make it so that we aren't doing that. What they're doing at the end of this game here, but we'll see what we can do. Hit by that. And not too much I can do here. I'll try to touch because we're in overtime. And overtime is an interesting mechanic. It's basically if you are touching the point, then the point, then basically your time can still go on. So it really leads to some kind of high stakes moments. And I think it's a really interesting implementation, just because it leads to those kinds of hype moments that game developers want you to have. Creating games with AR, VR, and in the future metaverse, I think it could be good. And in the language used for game making other than C#. Yeah, I think there's huge amounts of potential with both of those things. Is Valorant? Nope, this is Overwatch. It's similar to Valorant, though, I would say. Let's queue up again. Hopefully, we don't just get in the middle of a match this time. But yeah, I think another thing I just want to do is answer all of your questions about. So what I want to, because as much as I like talking at people, I want to make sure that this is valuable for you all. So what do y'all want to get out of this stream? Like, are there certain things you want to learn about game design, about Overwatch? Please put your comments in the chat below. I'll be keeping track of that. But one thing I think I'll go over right now is let's say Genji. Genji is a very complex character in Overwatch. And this is the reason I chose Overwatch, or part of the reason I chose Overwatch, because Genji is a very unique character in terms of a first-person shooter, because he doesn't shoot bullets, he shoots shurikens. You can shoot him like that, or like that, which is a bit faster but has more spread. He can dash, and he can deflect. which basically reflects damage that's being done to him from the front, and then he has an ultimate ability when you charge it up. And I think it's really interesting how they implemented Genji in this game. I think part of there's some disconnect between the fans of Overwatch and some of the game design decisions, because a lot of things aren't necessarily as obvious as you might initially think. Because Genji, compared to who I was playing as before, who was Cassidy, Cassidy has quite a lot of damage, and he's more traditional, I would say, in his aim type, where you just kind of aim and aim for headshots. It's very focused on the mechanical portion, whereas Genji, I would say, is far more focused on the game sense kind of skill here. You see how I'm trying to use my mobility to go up to this Widowmaker right here, and if I were Cassidy, it would take me a lot longer to get that Widowmaker, and I might not have been able to get her. Whereas using Genji's mobility, I was able to secure that kill. And so I think it's really interesting how mobility can be balanced around, because it's such a fun aspect to games, just in general, even outside of like Overwatch and FPSs. But it's such a hard thing to balance around, because with mobility comes more opportunity to deal damage and to secure kills. So it's not as black and white to balance as something else that, say, does, you might balance more around damage, around like, aim mechanics, I would say. So here, I think I'll go on their support, just to make sure that their monkey doesn't get too many heals. I'll go up to the soldier next. I'll go up to the tank last, just because he's very tanky, and I just don't want him to kind of overtake the game here. Can you tell me which games you have designed? Well, I've designed a few things. I've designed a game called Startery, which was a game for what I mentioned before, which was the Technology Student Association. And it was a very interesting VR game that basically you were it was very simple in its idea. You were basically surrounded by all kinds of robots coming at you, and you were on a spaceship. And you basically had an archery bow, and you were basically trying to defend yourself. And it was a very interesting kind of game. There were power-ups, there were other mechanics which were interesting, but I think the main part of the complexity that came from it was the fact that we were doing VR in the first place, because I would say compared to a lot of other things, VR, especially at the time we were building it, wasn't as developed as it is at all. A lot of these setups were significantly bulkier than they are now in terms of like how you set up a VR environment. So I'd say that was a really interesting challenge. And the other thing that I created was a Mega Man clone. So I created a clone of Mega Man 2. And it was really interesting because in this kind of challenge, I wasn't trying to make a game I thought was objectively good. I was trying to recreate a game, which was a really interesting challenge. It's like, so for example, if y'all have, eat fast food often, if you've heard of the Big Mac, right? If you try to unlock the Krabby Patty formula and recreate a Big Mac, you're not necessarily trying to create the best tasting burger. You're trying to recreate a Big Mac. And there's lots of little things that go into that, like the type of bun they use. Like, I feel like now we kind of know the ingredients they have in like their sauce, but we have, but it's all about the ratios and that kind of thing. And it's part of that imperfection, because I think a lot of people would say that it isn't perfect. It's part of that imperfection that makes a Big Mac what it is. Because realistically, McDonald's isn't necessarily just trying to sell food, they're trying to sell you their product and their flavor. And part of that comes in nostalgia and making food that tastes the same all the time, which I think is a really interesting problem to try and solve. That's one thing I actually learned about a lot with some of my colleagues at General Mills, was because my roommate, actually, he was in the food science department, whereas I was in the programming department. And he actually was working on reformulating some of their bread. Because you might not know this, but a lot of so for example, if you go to Kroger's or just like a Safeway or a generic kind of food grocery store, and they have like generic generic store brand. That brand of, like, for example, bread was probably made by General Mills. They're probably the ones who manufactured it, but they put, their brands, the store brand on it. So I think that's actually very interesting. And with all of the recession and all of the financial concerns in the world right now, they're trying to reformulate the bread, which I thought was really cool. I'd love to know how software developer differs from game developer, not just from what programming languages they use. I think that's a really good question, and I think as I see it, there's far fewer differences than I think a lot of people kind of might think. Oh, did I get off the map? No. Oh, I fell off the map. Oh well. But there's far fewer differences, I would say. But it depends. So, for example, one game I think is really interesting is Pokemon. It's like the widest grossing franchise in the world, basically. And I remember reading an article about the making of the third generation of Pokemon, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And I remember hearing from, I don't know if it was Shinichi Masuda or if it was another developer on the team, but basically they were saying that one thing they kind of wanted to change from the last games, which were Gold and Silver, was that they got a lot of people saying that, oh, this is like good and whatever, but there's not much different. I feel like there should be more new stuff going on, when instead they, in the game they had to go through the Kanto region again. There are a lot of new Pokemon, but there were a lot of old Pokemon as well. If you notice in those older Pokemon games, or in Generation 2 specifically, you'll notice that a lot of the gym trainers or gym leaders' aces are actually not Gen 2 Pokemon, they're Gen 1 Pokemon, which I think brought on this feeling that it just was a upgrade, but it didn't have enough that was different. Just need to get out of here. Thank you, Anna. Anna's another character I think I'll play a little bit in the stream as well, just because her design is completely fascinating to me. Yeah, let's say that you're trying to make a oops, there we go. Let's say that you're trying to make a piece of software. So let's say like a mobile app. There's a lot of design considerations in that. Like, for example, sometimes people build things for like the elderly. Like, if you want to build an app that's like simple and easy to use, there's things you want to build that are like specifically for the elderly, for example. But in game design, you have a similar kind of thing where, there's a lot of games that have like an age, or like a target audience in terms of age. But there's a lot of games like Pokemon, for example, that cater to all sorts of people. There we go. There's a lot of games that cater to all sorts of audiences, and it's tough to try and cater to all of those audiences at the same time. And I think part of where Overwatch kind of struggles with that, as I think is expected because it's such a complex kind of thing to try and solve, is game balance. Because if you don't know, there's a lot of different ranks in Overwatch that you can get to in competitive. There's gold, there's bronze, up until grandmaster and top 500. And so there's a lot of different skill levels there. There's a lot of people who may not have played a video game before in their life, and this is their first game, which is totally valid. But then there also might be top 500 players who might be so good at the game that when they're facing another top 500 team, the only reason they may have lost a fight is because a single ability was misused that led to a chain of events that led them to losing that fight. It's so micro in terms of how you have to optimize your play. But that all depends on how the game is balanced. And I think Overwatch has actually done an outstanding job of balancing their game because, although it isn't perfect, obviously, there's a lot of different characters all playing in this game. And one character I'm going to play in a little bit is Reinhardt, who is a tank. And Reinhardt is an extremely interesting character to be in an FPS just because he has a hammer. So he doesn't actually shoot a gun or anything like that. he has a ranged projectile, but it's pretty slow, and it's not really like your main move is your hammer swing, which is like very short range. It's kind of like the length of the dragon blade that I was using. So it's very interesting to how you kind of balance a hero based on the tools they have, and kind of like I mentioned with mobility. With Genji, there's mobility, yes, in terms of like actual speed, but there's mobility in a lot of other ways too, which is how you can actually get into a team fight and how you can deal damage efficiently and effectively. Let's see what else is here. Let's see, any questions? So, thank you, 404. I appreciate it. So it seems there's a bit of confusion on the check-in link because it seems some people's check-in links aren't working. I just checked this one, the one I've been sending in chat, this one does work. So I just sent it over just to clear up any kinds of confusion. Gaming's most interesting on hit points and things, and every time a bug occurs or an issue is noted, they buff or nerf a character. Also the physics. Yeah, I think deciding how to buff or nerf a character is very interesting. Ink is not working. Oh, is the link in the announcement wrong? Oh, yeah, it is. Sorry about that. Let me change that real quick. Okay, I just updated the announcement. So thank you for letting me know. I just updated that in the one in the Discord. I just updated it. What softwares do you use for designing? And thank you. Yep, no problem. What software do I use? Well, there's quite a few things that you can use. Let's play some tank here. There's Unity, which you can use. It's a 3D/2D engine. There's Unreal Engine. There's actually a lot of really great Unreal Engine games. So I'd say if you're like really hard focused on building 3D games, especially something like an FPS, I think Unreal Engine is actually a very good option because there's games like Fortnite that are made in it, as well as many others. But I think the reason is Unreal Engine has a feature called blueprinting. And blueprinting is basically a simplified form of programming that's kind of made for kind of being a more visual representation of some of the code where you're physically attaching nodes onto different nodes, and you're writing code in a bit of a different way that's more visually understandable, I would say. So this character I'm playing right here, his name is, oops. Probably should have waited for my healer, but his name is Reinhardt. So Reinhardt's abilities are he has a hammer, so he just swings his hammer. Again, he doesn't have a projectile he shoots outside of his fire strike. He has a shield like this, and then he has his charge, which he can cancel. And when you hit someone with charge, you basically pin them into the wall. Looks like they went through cancel this punch, but okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how they balance Reinhardt compared to other tanks that are, say, more poke tanks, as in they have much longer range than Reinhardt. And so think about one matchup. Reinhardt compared to a Widowmaker, and Widowmaker is a sniper, so if you don't know who Widowmaker is, you can just use that as baseline. Imagine how you kind of I have never. I've never had to block anyone before. That was an interesting experience. But anyway, I'll try and get the game audio fixed for 1 second. Yeah, I'll do that in a second. Thanks for mentioning that, by the way. But how does Reinhardt beat a Widowmaker who has infinitely more range and quite a bit of damage? How does Reinhardt beat that? Well, the main answer is through his shield, because Reinhardt's main method of doing damage, like he has to get to Widowmaker somehow. So it's kind of like if you've ever played a fighting game, I would say it's pretty similar to how a grappler works in a fighting game. Is you try to prevent that res. But it's kind of like a grappler in a fighting game where they have less options. They aren't fast. They're more slow, but when they do hit, they hit harder, and they're very difficult to deal with when they're up close. But that's the main challenge of them is getting up close. I'd say Reinhardt has the same kind of deal, where getting up close is his main obstacle. But when you can get up close, like you see here, oops, oh, I missed my shatter. Oh, what? Oh my god. Yeah, like I was saying, when you do get up close, you can deal a decent amount of damage. Now the game right now isn't balanced the best in terms of Reinhardt as a tank, but I would say that for the most part, that's how he functions. Now I see that I have 3 people up, so I'm going to go in. See if there's anything I could really do there. And once I'm finished with this round, I'll go around to answering questions. It's just a bit difficult to check chat and then tab over to the game at the same time. Oh, there's a tire. Got the junk. Ah, right, I didn't turn. But I think part of the appeal of Reinhardt and why they actually decided to implement him as a character isn't just because he's fun, which he is, but I think it's also just because of, like I was saying, you have multiple forms of skill expression, like I was mentioning with Genji a little bit ago. So instead of just having it be like aim oriented, you can also have a form of skill expression where it's based on your kind of positioning. So let me. Let's see these questions. Supposed to have a game audio. How is the game audio? Oh, whoops. How is the game audio now? Do you hear it? I'm not sure if you can. There will be a recording. Yep, there are going to be recordings for all of these workshops. I'm getting in this field. Thanks for the information. Can you give me a LinkedIn? Sure. I mean, my name is Zane Hesnayan, so you just look me up and you'll be able to find me. Okay, let me try and get this audio working. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure why, but the audio wasn't. I don't know. The audio doesn't work, but I don't think that's a huge concern. Yep. Also, someone was saying that I think 44 was saying that it was like 5 to 10 FPS. Is it still 5 to 10 FPS? Like, how's the FPS doing? Let's play some support now. Because the issue shouldn't be my PC, because my PC is running it at 60 FPS right now. Okay, it seems like it's at least okay, so that's good at least. But yeah, here's another character I think is really interesting, and as I was mentioning, we have another hour of streaming. So if you have questions about game design or anything, put them in chat because I want to answer them as I play. Excuse me. But another very interesting character is Ana. So Ana's actually a very popular character, and what she does is she shoots these kinds of darts, and if you hit an enemy, they deal damage. If you heal an ally, they heal the ally, which I think is really interesting. Just to have that in one projectile. Also because she has a innate ability that kind of does a similar kind of thing, where if you hit an ally, it heals a little bit, but it also makes that ally receive more healing for a little while. Whereas if you hit an enemy, it makes an enemy immune to healing. So it's an anti-healing ability. I'm going to deal some damage. So I think that's really interesting doing things that way, just because you have an ability that's just so flexible and have an ability that's so flexible and that can be used in quite a few different situations. But also on a kind of game design standpoint, you have a character who has room for quite a few more abilities. To where I don't have to have like a oh my god. To where I don't have to have like a separate healing damage ability. I have one ability that can do both. But there has to be drawbacks, right? You know. Okay, cool. Yeah, there has to be drawbacks, right? And one of the drawbacks to Ana is that her abilities are very skill based, as in you have to land them or you aren't going to get value. Like her aim is through a sniper rifle, which I'm glad it is. I'm glad it's not something like a AoE heal like Baptiste, to where he doesn't really have to aim as much, because it's much more dependent on skill. And I think that's part of where her skill expression comes from, is from the actual mechanical aim. And as you saw there, I was able to nail the enemies. But what I'm trying to do here is both enable my tank, but also disable the enemy tank. I can do that in a few different ways. For example, if I just got a... Oh, someone said they needed healing. Betsy should have that Bastion just fine. But I'm trying to deal some damage as well. Supports function quite differently in Overwatch 2 compared to Overwatch 1. I think one part of that is... Oh, my queen needs heals! Oh. And I think one part of that is just that you have to be more self-sufficient, because one of the most interesting kind of sequel changes, I think, is Overwatch 2's going from 6 tanks to 5 tanks, because I think it's changed so much about the game. More than... Okay, there's not much I could do about that. But it's changed so much about the game because now you have one less tank. But let's think about, in terms of game design, like, what does having one less tank mean? So one less tank means that you have less defensive abilities going on. So there are fewer shields, which sounds great, but that means that there's also fewer abilities to protect you from the enemy, which means that damage is going to be going up like crazy, because there are a lot of abilities, at least in Overwatch 1, who are kind of balanced by their ability to be blocked by other abilities. When you remove a lot of those shields and those blocks, they become significantly more powerful. So that's why they had to change some of the damage characters as well. bro is being flamed because he's named Jack. Very interesting people in chat we have going on. We try to pocket my echo here. And I'll try to support my Junker Queen on the front line here. I missed my nade, but that's fine. Fun character. 12:15 a.m. here. I'll go to sleep now. Meet you again in the app design stream. Yep, I'll see you then. He's listed out some resources where we can learn more about game designing. Sure, there's all sorts of things that you can utilize. One thing I would strongly recommend is just YouTubers and kind of those online presences where you can basically see someone build a game that you're interested in building. Like, for example, if you like building 2D games and you want to, and 2D games often are much easier to build than 3D games. So I would say that if you want to start off, I'd suggest starting off with a 2D game to begin with. And one YouTuber I would recommend is called Brackies. I'm not sure if he still uploads, but he's who I used when I started off in game development. And he was really helpful in terms of Unity, in terms of building kind of a multiplayer game engine, and kind of learning about how networking works in order to build games. I'm going to try to touch here. I think we're going to lose this fight, though. But he was very instrumental in kind of how I kind of learned about game development, and specifically through Unity. I'm trying to lead this Ryan away, I guess. I retired 2 years ago. That's a shame. Oh, oops. There we go. All right, I have Nano Boost here. Nano Boost is a really interesting ability that basically benefits one of your teammates, and that teammate takes 50% reduced damage, and they, I believe they deal more damage as well, which is very powerful because, and I think a lot of people might not instantly kind of understand this because there's another character that has a damage boost ability called Mercy, who is very popular. Oh, whoops. And one of Mercy's best parts of her kit, and kind of the reason why you would play Mercy, is her damage boost. And one of the reasons that Mercy's damage boost is so good, I'm going to sleep that, then a nano, and I wait for the cleanse so that I can nade them after, getting them more, and waiting for the enemy's cooldowns before using my own. But one of the reasons that Mercy is so good is because damage boost breaks a lot of thresholds in the game. So, for example, like if you want to if you kind of want to one-shot a 200 HP hero, you can't normally do that with a character like Ashe. It takes a few shots. But if you have a Mercy damage boost, suddenly that 2-shot turns into a potential 1-shot, which makes her extremely more powerful. And even if it was just like, I think the fact that it's, regardless of the specific damage numbers, I would say that the fact that it's a 1-shot compared to a 2-shot changes the speed at which you get kills, which is really important. Like I mentioned with stuff like Reinhardt, the speed at which you're able to secure a kill, basically how you're able to take advantage of enemies having those moments of vulnerability. If you're able to do that quicker, you're going to be able to secure a kill. Whereas, sure, you might get some damage off, but you might not be able to secure a kill on an enemy. And so that's where I think kind of Mercy's damage boost comes really into play. And of course, there has to be a downside. And one of Mercy's downside is that she lacks kind of an offensive presence. She's, I'd say, one of the least like threatening kind of supports on her own compared to the other supports, at least in like a 1v1 kind of scenario. And when you, where's that timer? There we go. And when you do that, that damage boosting as Mercy, you're kind of giving up some value of your own and basically attaching your value to how your teammate is performing. because you're basically attaching yourselves to them. You're basically going in when you're DPS when they dive in. So I think it's really interesting how they kind of manage that in terms of having low healing but consistent healing. I'm basically making it so that you're very good at single targets. And it looks like her Echo's in trouble, so I'll help her. Nice. And I'll answer some questions in a little bit, just once this round's done, so I can dive back out and look at chat. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what y'all think in terms of what kind of games do you want to develop. That's an interesting question I have for you all, because I've seen a lot of people who are interested in developing like kind of RPGs or like FPS games, which that's why a lot of people are probably here, because you're interested in how that's kind of balanced. So yeah, let me know what kinds of games that you want to create. That was bad positioning on my part. For me, those are a few different parts that go into specifically FPS game design. One is the networking aspect, so how you can, actually pair all of these players together, which is, this a networking thing. But also how you can kind of, I think the competitive system, the idea of a competitive system is very interesting, just because in a competitive game like Overwatch, with all these different kinds of potential people you could play as we saw, like Reinhardt has a hammer, but then other characters have just like traditional like shooting abilities. Like, it's very interesting to kind of determine like how one character performed compared to another, when one character might not have been doing maybe the most damage, but they were making space, which enabled the others to do more damage. I think it's interesting how you kind of compare those things that are so different, and kind of realize what kind of wins a match of Overwatch, which is not a trivial question to answer. Oh, yeah, that's me. All right, let's see. Large narrative-driven / first / third-person perspective multiplayer action-adventure games, puzzle solving and mind games, MMORPGs. Oh, that one's really interesting, actually. And let's see, let's play some damage again. Really, is it still 5 to 10 FPS? Let me... Really, because my actual game is running at 60 FPS. I know when I like switch back to kind of my stream settings, it goes very like kind of choppy. But I know when I go back to kind of this, like actually just on the game itself, it seems fast, at least from my like from how it shows on my end. So that's a bit odd. So who I'm going to be playing next is Sojourn, and Sojourn's actually a new character in Overwatch. Gotta avoid these skill balls right here. And so Sojourn has a few different abilities. She has her primary fairy like this. And once you charge up this kind of meter on the side here, as you can see over time, it kind of defuriates if you aren't shooting anybody. Oh, he He's so scary. Let's. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that. Oh my god. Oh my god. No one saw that. If anyone asks you if you saw that, you didn't see anything. Okay. As I was saying, Sojin has her primary fire, which is like this. She has her kind of area damage over time kind of orb that is very good for getting ultimate charge because it can affect a lot of enemies at one time. And she has this kind of railgun right here, which is basically what I was charging up. So as you deal damage with her primary, her railgun charges up, and you can deal quite a bit of burst damage. As you can see there, I got a bit of a double kill. And it's really good for finishing off low health targets. Right, I'll push the cart because it doesn't seem like anyone else will. Someone suggested maybe clamp the FPS. I think next time I die, I'll try that and see how that goes. I think that'll actually be. I think I might fix it actually, because you said in. Okay, now I'll try it. I'll try it. Hopefully this might be a little bit better. The technical artist on this went wild. Yeah, Overwatch has a lot of very interesting design elements to it, which are honestly really unique compared to a lot of other games. It doesn't look cartoony, but it doesn't look like super ultra realistic, which I do like. It's kind of like that TF2 style, but leans more into the realistic direction. And TF2 is a game which I really love because it just has such stability because of the design in terms of the gameplay. It's very casual oriented, but also if you want to go kind of in depth and kind of competitive with it, you can. It's almost shots. And we staggered this Ana, so she's dead, and now she has to wait a bit longer to respawn to her team, which is nice, which means we have more time to push this good old cart. And one thing about Sojin, which is really cool, is that her primary fire is, I'd say, a bit more forgiving. Like it has a decent amount of spread to it. It's more of a kind of, it's a fast kind of projectile, whereas her skill shot is her rail, which has immense power because it deals burst damage, which, if you kill someone, like, you can't just heal that off, like they're dead. So compared to something that deals like more damage over time, that gives, again, more opportunities for them to have an impact on that. And the speed of your kills is a very important part of how you balance someone's damage, not just the amount of damage they're doing, but how quickly they're doing it and how reactable it can be. Oh, see, this junk wants me. I keep missing my real guns. It's quite hard to aim. I also don't play like a ton of Sojourn. Though I have a Mercy Pocket, which is nice. I heard someone behind. And that, it doesn't matter that I died because we got the point. So now, we have this closer spawn, which is why in this game in particular you see a lot of kind of ultimate abilities and a lot more pressure and engagement, kind of high stakes coming very close to the point because, even though like I died there, we're still very close to the point, so they have to back off because, we're right here. I didn't mean to go that far forward. And I want to know your all's opinion here. Who do you think is best for me to target right now as Sojourn? Should it be their tank, their DPS, or their support? I'm interested to know. Thanks for our mercy. I was going to die from this first. Jeez. Let's see, and there's a good example of how Ana couldn't have used her nade because that damage was instantaneous. Want to clear those turrets for my teammate. I could have stopped that. Someone said Symmetra, someone said destroy their support. Yep, those are all decent answers. The fun answer to that is it depends, which is fun because it really isn't an answer. But in this situation, who should I prioritize? Well, first of all, I should focus on staying alive because that's honestly the most important thing. Right now, I'll focus their tank because she's easy to hit. And she's doing quite a lot here. But if I have the opportunity, I think it's a good idea to kind of get after Ana because she's very low in there. But if I don't get after this Jungle Queen, she might get nanoed. So it really depends on the exact situation. Most times you should be going after the squishy characters, i.e. the characters who have less HP, aka aren't tanks. But there are times when pressuring a tank is useful in its own way, especially when a tank is out of position or the tank just has a cooldown that you really want to expend. So for example, if I'm playing as a character that really wants to stay alive and get a lot of healing, like maybe Ramatra, I kind of want to force out, or let's say I'm playing Cassidy actually, and I really don't want, if they're playing like an Orisa, I don't want to get Javelined because the Javelin cancels my ultimate and it really just cancels my entire ultimate. So I want to bait out that Javelin in the first place in order to make sure that when I do use my ultimate, I don't get immediately stopped by it. And we won. All right. We've got another hour of streaming here. So what do you all want me to do? Because we could still play Overwatch. I'm totally down to do that. Excuse me, if there's anything else you want me to go over, feel free to let me know. And if there's any other Q&A you have, even if it isn't necessarily just about game design, if it's about like me in general, or like MLH or anything like that, I'm totally down to answer that as well. But yeah, I want to make this interesting for you all. Like, playing games is fun, but I also want to make sure that you all are having a good time as well. Let's see, who should I play next? We'll play some Pharah. So, also, how is the FPS going? Like, is it still kind of choppy? Because I did what one of you all suggested, and I lowered the FPS to 60. I capped it there. So has that helped, or like how is the FPS doing? Because on my end it's pretty smooth, but I'm not sure how it is on the stream. Okay, they have a Bastion who's up there. Everybody was up there, but all right. See, I'm going to go in using my Concussive Blast. So Concussive Blast is an ability that basically knocks you or an enemy back, and it's very useful for getting that kind of burst movement. As you mentioned, speed can be very powerful in terms of like movement speed, kind of like how Genji is, where he has that burst speed, like how on that point of Lijiang, I was able to secure the kill on that Widowmaker because I was able to move up to her in time before she got time to move out of position. Where is that Genji? Oh, he's over there. I think first I'll go after their supports just to kind of force out some of those abilities. So like I forced out her TP, which enabled my team to pressure her, which is very valuable because you don't want to do, all these things by yourself. You want to have the help of your teammates. And one way that you and your teammates can help each other out is by forcing out cooldowns that kind of enable or disable your enemies or allies. And what you just saw there was the effect of Honest Nano Boost. I think that's the first time we've seen it kind of on, how it looks kind of on a character. Fine. I'll kind of keep pushing, making sure that I'm poking the enemy out of it. Don't want to take too much damage from that soldier, though. Yeah, it's fine. We got some healing. And then at the point. Nice. We got a team kill. And so Pharah is another really interesting example of a character because she can fly, which is completely unlike almost every other character besides like Echo. So she has this kind of vertical mobility in a way that no other character has. Like even Genji, yes, he can climb walls, but he can't do stuff like this. Like Pharah and Echo are the only characters who could ever position here. So it leads to very unique kinds of styles of gameplay. But that also makes it very frustrating to balance because different people kind of deal with these things. That was just bad. Different people deal with those threats in different ways. For example, if you're a top 500 player, it might be far easier to kind of deal with Pharah if you're with your team. Whereas if you're maybe a gold or bronze player, it might be more difficult because you're less consistent with aim or something like that, and you maybe don't have the most, you maybe don't have the best teamwork going on with your teammates. I'm just trying to live here. And the biggest threat to Pharah are hit scanning characters. So hit scan meaning they aren't like a projectile. They fire instantly onto a character, which is very useful, and it makes it way easier to track a Pharah compared to, let's say, a Hanzo or another Pharah. Like getting air shots is harder than just clicking on the head when you see it. They've used a rush here, so I'm going to back out. Rush increases your movement speed, attack speed, and your ability cooldowns, or decreases your ability cooldowns, so they go down, or they come up faster. And honestly, I think I'm just going to try and play safe here. This soldier wants me so bad. It's really good. Both their supports got the DPS. And instead of going the tank again, I'm going to go for the support just because they're the one enabling the tank. And in this game in particular, healing is so effective, and so you can heal someone who's at 1 HP to full so quickly. I was trying to barrage, but I didn't think I had a great position, so I can refrain. Hopefully we can use our barrage to create an opening here so we can secure the point, because then we'll have closer spawn. Actually, they've killed quite a few of our teammates, actually all of them. So I'm going to back out, just so I don't get staggered. Like I mentioned with the on before, if you get staggered, that means you'll respawn quite a bit after your teammates, and therefore, they'll have to wait and you're losing time, which could be potential kills that you kind of miss out on. There's soldiers going up there. Oh, I didn't realize the soldier was still up there. I guess he was just hiding. And by the way, if you have a character that you want me to play, or kind of like explain your playstyle, feel free to let me know. I'm honestly down to play anything, because again, we have like 45 minutes, maybe an hour, until this stream ends. So, we have a decent amount of time. That was just bad positioning. Oh, somehow we just got the point, which is nice. Now we're so much closer to the action. I could have killed that soldier, but I didn't want to. But I didn't go for it just because they got beat, which is Lucio's ultimate. So he had a bunch more health for a limited amount of time. You can see that Reaper's trying to go for that health pack. I think I'm playing a bit reckless here. Let me try. That soldier very much wants me. I'll try to play more conservative in terms of my angles, which is a huge part of this game and kind of how you kind of, which I'd say is a big difference between low-level Overwatch and high-level Overwatch, is the angles. And, because at the end of the day, what's on here, these kinds of stats, they don't really matter. What matters is getting kills. Like, kills are important, of course, but it's making space and capturing the objective. And you can do that through a multitude of ways, whether it's abilities like Anna's nade, which do a lot for her team, but don't necessarily show up on the scoreboard. It's good to have a key angle on your opponent because you're able to kind of force them back. But it's also good to kind of reduce the number of angles that your enemies have on you so that you aren't getting hit from as many directions. Oh, this signpost. Oh, I need to heal. I'll try to get this. Yep, I knew he was going to blossom because he went very far forward. nice. Try not to go too aggressive just because we do have a pretty close spawn here, and I don't want to kind of stagger myself. So I do want to touch here, but I don't want to make sure. But I want to make sure that I'm not kind of creating an opening for their team to get on me. They switched to double hit scan, so double hit scan is very hard for Far to deal with just because that's one of her main weaknesses as a flyer. Less match, but you know, it's good nonetheless. Who's your main support? Well, I play for quite a few characters. You know what? Let's play some support. Why not? Good shout. Let's see, what supports are there? I play a lot of Ana. Play some BAP. I like Zenyatta. Lucio is fun as well. I'd say those are my main kind of characters that I play. Kiriko is nice because Kiriko is meta right now. Though I'd say I'm actually a tank main. Play quite a bit of Roadhog, Sigma, Zarya. I play some Winston. Winston's probably the prime example, actually, kind of alongside Ryan, of a character who isn't necessarily dependent on aim skill, but more so on positioning. And Winston, I would say, like, up front, like, he kind of seems like a character that's very easy to play, which, like, at a low level, he is. But I'd say that he's also a character that is extremely hard to master, just because in a high elo scenario, you're going to have a lot of damage coming at you, and you have to learn how to navigate that. All right, and here I'm playing another support, and it's a kind of different support compared to Ana, because I'd say that Zenyatta has low but consistent heals, and he can just place his orbs on allies, and he has a Discord orb, which makes enemies take a bit more damage. But I'd say the bulk of Zenyatta's gameplay is actually as a kind of damage support, to where you're mainly doing damage, and you're kind of healing on the side and building up your Transcendence, which is a very good ultimate ability. And a good way to kind of use your orbs are, well, you can put them on key targets that you want to secure KOs on. I want to save that Ash right there. Ball is quite annoying. Let's see. I'll switch off Zen here just because they have a kind of Ball is very flanky, so he dives on supports very easily. And that's one thing that is, you know, one of his not as bigger weaknesses, is the fact that he's vulnerable to being flanked and that kind of thing, because he doesn't have like a movement ability. Here's another really important character, Lucio, who is actually very meta right now. So he has two things he can use. He has a heal, which is a standard heal. He also has a speed boost, which is very unique. And knowing when to use the speed versus the heal is very important here. So for example, I'm going to kind of speed my team so they can kind of get out of the Genji's radius, rather than healing, because if I were to heal, Genji has so much burst damage, he would just kind of burst through it. I'm just going to speed our match a little bit, just so we can claim some of these KOs that we might otherwise miss out on. Also speed our matcha so that they can get back to our team a bit quicker. I'm going to heal just, because we're passive right now, we're just taking poke damage. And I also want to build up my sound barrier. which is a very good ultimate ability. Because healing and doing damage builds your ultimate, but I want a speed here right now, is because Ramanch is using his ultimate, which is amazing, and I want to make sure that he is able to connect to enemies, because one of the key things about Ramanch's ult is that if it is attached to an enemy, it doesn't stop. So that means that having speed is very important for him, especially. I'd say the similar thing goes to Reinhardt, where in that scenario I mentioned where you're fighting against a Widowmaker, you also want to kind of, or when you're fighting a Widowmaker, one thing that's really important is actually getting to the Widowmaker and making sure that you can actually utilize that damage of yours. And so speed really helps with that, because it enables you to get to the Widow in a much more effective way. I got hold there. Zarya, yep, I'll play some Zarya next. I think after this match, because I'm queued for sport right now, but next match I will play Zarya. And I'll also kind of hex our teammates here, so they can get back to the fight quicker, so we're not like staggered. I'll speed here because Ana has her anti-heal on us. Nothing I can do about that. So I want to do something that's at least useful. Oh, whoops. There you go. Okay, so we got a trap. I want to make sure I heal my Ana here, just because that makes my job easier as a support, because, you know, I can heal here, but it's much harder for her to heal herself compared to just, you know, healing allies. I'm keeping just so we can avoid that Cassidy. You get this ball because it's out of position, and I'm going to stick. Oh, well, I was going to stick by my support so I could boop the Dragon Blade away, but wasn't exactly able to do that. So we'll just get back into the fight here. And actually, rather than going in on my own, I'll speed in our teammates so we can all group up. The ball is falling for so many of these traps, and I'm also going to speed out our Ana here, just so she can get out, because she's a very important character. Play chill here, just because our other guests are getting back anyway. Lucio's moving to get out of there, make sure that I heal my Widow. I'm going to beat here just to make sure that it doesn't get us, and also so that I can get her. Nice. Ah. think the idea of so the three roles in Overwatch, damage is pretty obvious. It's just damage. As a lot of other games, tanks are interesting because they kind of make space and supports. I think they're especially interesting just because they do so much more than heal. That's where a lot of the fun kind of debuffs and other kind of game mechanics come into play that are more like a MOBA than a traditional kind of FPS game. Oh, that's Bob. Nice, Rana. Slips it. I want to heal to make sure Serpent doesn't die from that poke. Let's see if we can do anything here. Oh, got Nana, but they couldn't touch. Right. Hey everyone. Hey Sam. Got 30 minutes left here, so I think I'll play some. I think I'll go tank and I'll play some Zarya here. Hopefully this is just a nice little chill stream for y'all. I know that you've been learning a lot throughout the week, and I want to make sure there's some, good times for one, just learning some cool facts about game design, but also just having some time to chill, especially with break having or coming to a close here, or winter break. Yeah. And as someone requested, I'll go Zarya. Everyone's day is going so far, by the way. Anyone do anything cool? Any good food? I made a pretty interesting dish. I made kind of like a mashed potato dish. It was kind of like half mashed potato, half kind of like cheese sauce. And I kind of had some meatballs over it that were a bit spicy. And it actually turned out very well. And some vegetables along with that. We're up against Enrisa here. So let's start off by making some space, using my bubbles to get charge. So what Zarya does is, I'm gonna use that for free charge. So what Zarya does is she basically has these bubbles that shield people from damage. And the more damage that is dealt to her bubbles, the more charge she gets. And the more charge she gets, the more damage she deals. So just one, nice. She did a really good res right there. She shielded herself so that we couldn't immediately get out her or boot her. I got instantly deleted right there. That's kind of what happens when you have a Mercy Pocketed Sojourn. Hopefully my team I can regroup with my team here, because there are 4 of us, 3 of us now. Oh, I missed that. I should have just aimed that at the ground. I don't know why I tried to hit the Sojourn with it. think this might be the last game for today's stream, unless anyone has anything else they want to talk about. Of course, I'm doing Q&A through all this. I think one thing I will mention is that I'm doing another stream later today, which is going to be the second part in my mobile app development stream. And part of what we're doing in that is basically that you all are kind of suggesting what I'm going to be building. So I want to hear what kind of cool things y'all have seen being built, and I'm basically kind of try and recreate some of those things in Flutter, which is basically what we're using in the workshop. Oh god, they're mostly after me. No, no, no. I want to make sure to spam out their Ash a bit. It's a little harder for them to just kind of get picks. I think I'm gonna die here. Yep. I do have ultimate here, and Zaya's ultimate is Graviton Surge, so I unsuccessfully used it last time, but this time, hopefully I can hit it here. Though we do definitely have to touch the point. I'll let my team know that I have it. I got a big ol' grab here. That there's supports in there. Oh, they nanoed the Bob. I haven't seen that in a while. I probably grabbed a little early there, if I'm honest. I kind of just wanted to use it before we before time went up for point. But that's fine, you know. We take those. So second point here, who should I play? I think I'll play some Roadhog. So let's go up to point here. I'll break this just so our DPS can use that. Safe angle. Oh, my hook broke. I don't know how that broke. Come on. So I was able to hook that Mercy out of position, catch her out. I forgot I had to reload. I kind of want to look for their Ana, see where she is. It went Sigma. And one important thing about Roadhog is that he's very easy to feed with. Like, you want to make sure you aren't taking too much damage with him just because his hitbox is so big and that he's very easy to kind of shoot. But his value kind of comes in that burst damage. I didn't want to ultimate there just because we had already lost some people. But yeah, I think this will be the last match I play. for the stream again, unless anyone has any other questions. I saved my hook. Oh, he went above the roof, so I couldn't get him. But I was trying to do is hook that Sigma out of his ultimate there. I keep missing all my hooks. Now he's in a tough position. Now I can just ult him. Go look for a Chica hook. Didn't get that time. Want to avoid that Sojourn. Don't want to waste too much of my Mercy's healing resources, so I'll make sure to heal there. And I have quite a big angle on me, so I want to reduce that. And now this Sigma's... Oh, I was going to say he's vulnerable, but he got nanoed. Sojourn's 1. And again, want to try to go after squishies here. I hooked him out of that. Then now that his ultimate can be doing a lot against my team there. Nice, got the point. But for Roadhog, no. Please no. Roadhog doesn't need any more buffs. He's so overpowered. What's your favorite GTA? I haven't actually played GTA before. What's your keyboard? I believe I have a Skytech gaming one, but I used to actually have a something like the Glorious modular keyboards. But I believe now they give as a prize for if you win the Hedera prize at MLH events, and gosh, I was just having a fun time. I like this Bastion. Alright, third round. Anyone this game? They went Diva, presumably because they want to make sure people aren't taking too much damage from my hooks. For Mercy there. Hook. Oh, we got the Ash, nice. I purposely didn't heal myself there just because I want to give my support some chance to get some ult charge off of me by healing me. And I want to take a relatively safe position right here. The Diva is actually out of mech, which is really nice, because if I can kind of hook her out when she's out of position, that'll be really good because it'll stagger a lot. We have a Widow. Actually, the Diva got back in mech. That's fine. I kind of relieve my team of this Diva right here, or the Mara, whoever I hooked. Maybe they would have was going to peek again, but right now we're in a pretty good spot, actually. We've taken up all of the space, and space is a huge part of Overwatch, because with space comes the ability to do damage, and just the ability to have more angles on your opponent, like I was saying before. The Widow's on the right side, so I'll probably go after her in a little bit. I canceled his charge there. I heal first, just make sure I don't die. And let's just get this Reinhardt. That should be pretty much it. This was a really nice stream. I hope everyone had a good time seeing me play, talk about game design, and all that stuff. Yeah, again, 8 p.m. EST, I'm going to be doing the second part of my mobile app development series, so if you want to see that, come over. But yeah, till then, see you all. Thanks for coming.